I'm Isabella and you're listening to Zeno. Each month, I have conversations with people from all walks of life about their personal stories of home, identity, and the search for belonging. Welcome to the show, Isaris. It's so wonderful to have you here. I'm really excited to talk about your work, your photography, and your latest series called Birthmark. How do you answer the question, where are you from? And what truths are missing in the answer that you give?
Thank you for having me here, first of all, Isabella. It's a huge pleasure. Where am I from? I think my sense of identity is really rooted on me. I'm from Andalusia, south of Spain, but I live in Germany for 9 years. So that's basically the answer I give every time. The truth in between is the whole story, how one decides to leave a home that you deeply love and how you go to a different country and decide to stay, right?
It's interesting you say the whole story is in between.
The whole truth is in between, of course. Yes.
And so what context about you and your life is important for us in order to understand your photography?
So I will say that I come from a family that is very matriarchal. So my grandmother and my mother are basically the ones ruling in the house, which I find amazing and deeply inspiring, but they are the ones who carry the most on their shoulders. I'd say I grew up seeing the mothers of my family carrying this responsibility of basically steering the family. And it did influence me in a way that I thought I didn't know if I want to become a mother. And also in a very claustrophobic way, the relationship they hold. For example, the women of my family were in charge of caring for my grandmother. And she's now 92. So their role is to be caregivers. And this is kind of usual in south of Spain. If you go there, it's a very, like a society that feels like a little bit stuck in time. And I grew up in this kind of claustrophobia and I wanted to leave somehow. I went to study in a university that was not very far away. I was always really rooted in my family. We were very together, but at the same time having a lot of conflict because of this sense of I want to be my own person. And my mother was a bit overprotective. And once I got the opportunity of traveling, I was really interested always in arts and traveling, but there was not a possibility where I come from. Not a lot of people left abroad or even there's also not many possibilities for galleries or for cultural options. So once I got the opportunity, I thought, why not taking it, and came to Germany and didn't leave.
It's interesting what you say around the notion of home for you in Spain and this conflicting sense of claustrophobia, but also the yearning to be your own person and this sense of freedom. And I think particularly perhaps for our generation, we're reflecting a lot on this conflict, this sense of if I stay at home where I was born and raised, there's always this sense of claustrophobia that I'm going to live with. Mm-hmm. But if I leave, there's this sense of freedom, whether it's real or imagined. And how do we negotiate these two things over a lifetime? It's very difficult.
I think there's not really a possibility of doing so. It's like a choice. The place where you live, it will become your home. I think at some point we really need to understand that our childhood home is a home. Also, our mother was a home for us at the beginning. Then it's the childhood home. And then the third home in our adulthood is the one we choose. And I think our generation especially, that we have so many options, we are more connected than ever. Everything is like a possible option for us. And it's impossible to choose. It's like with dating apps, dating has become more hard than ever because of there's always another option and you see it, it's right there in your pocket.
The overwhelm around availability of choice.
Exactly. And I think we didn't have this on the past. So the question of belonging or home was a lot simpler than it is now.
Yes, I would say it was simpler and it was almost a social imperative because let's say if you stayed in a small village in the south of Spain, all that you knew was the village, and if you were to step out of line in some way, it would have extreme consequences for you.
Exactly. You will lose contact to all your beloved ones and your friends, and you will have to start anew completely alone. That's super scary.
What languages have you found home in?
I always think that once you dream in a language, is your home too.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's still Spanish, but also English. I started dreaming in English a few years back, and I communicate at home with my husband in English. So yeah, and now my daughter is also learning Spanish, and she mixes, but she also speaks a lot of German, actually. She mixes both languages perfectly. So yeah, I think my mother tongue is my home language, yeah.
And what's your relationship like with German?
I guess any expat could answer this the same as I will do. It's a complicated language, but it is fascinating, the possibilities that you can express as a language of poets, of course. Once you understand it, you will grow love for it. I speak it, I understand it, but I still cannot feel myself fully when expressing myself in German. I always, I don't know if it's laziness, but I always steer the conversation in English. So I can be fully there.
So in Spanish, you feel like you can fully inhabit who you are. It's such a beautiful way to see it. I'm always interested in how language shapes identity, and this idea that we show different parts of ourselves through language.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And as a migrant, to adopt a certain language, it gives you almost, I wouldn't even say a mask, but it gives you a different outsider view on yourself.
Of course, if you are a migrant, it's also your responsibility to adapt to the place you're in and to become one with the environment. In a way, you need to talk to the people who live there for their whole lives or who come from the place. For example, in this sense, with the family of my husband, I only speak in German. I know they can understand English, but as a sign, I don't know, of respect, or as I'm part of this family now, and your mother tongue is, you don't need to change your identity or pretend who you are, that you are a different person. Like I think it's also like your comfort shoes, your house shoes. You wear them in your home, and they make you feel comfortable, and they make you choose the right words and express the right emotions. Some people that are completely fluent, like I speak English for a very long time. I studied it, but still now I have trouble, thinking of the right word I want to choose, and it takes me a little while. And I still feel that the person that is Isa in English is not the person that she's in Spanish, especially talking Andalusian, because we're known for having this strong accent, this joking mood all the time, making fun of even of our shadows, as we say. It's a complete different person that I am when I speak in Spanish.
Talk to me more about that, making fun of your shadow. What does that mean?
That means that we don't, I think humor, it's a big thing in Andalusia. Like, I don't know, maybe it's also I'm stuck on the past because I don't interact with people there like in a society there for like 9 years. But when I was also growing up, we're just making fun of everything. Don't take it life so seriously and being very bright. So making fun of our shadow will mean don't taking yourself too seriously and always being the first one making fun of yourself, because you need to be like that if you want to face the real world sometimes.
Wow, I absolutely love that. Such a powerful metaphor, just to think of something like Carl Jung's like shadow exploration, this idea of the darker self as almost like the shadow is always there, and it's the first thing that you kind of point to make fun of and play with.
Absolutely. It's like your mirror, and if you're able to make a bit fun of or be aware of your flaws, you're in a more relaxed state of being, I think. I lost that a little bit, I have to say, since I started doing art. I have to remember it.
And what would you say your earliest memories are of feeling like an outsider or that you didn't belong?
Oh, pretty young. Already in high school, yes. A completely outsider who was reading books and got even books stolen from my backpack and making fun of because I was writing stories. And yes, high school was really tough.
So reflecting on that memory, that sense of you were creating stories and you were in this like rich creative world as a child or as a teenager. How does that relate to your sense of identity now being an artist?
Yeah, I think if you're an artist, you're always an artist. You know, there is always a part of yourself that is yearning to express something that it's inside of you and you don't know how to give it to others or how to tell others. And it's the easiest way to build a bridge between yourself and the rest of the world. I also really love to read, and some books that apparently were not very age appropriate, but everything that landed on my hands from the bookshelf of my uncle. I was reading it and then I recreated the same stories. I'm like, what if it will go this way? Or, like something that appealed me. I took it and made it mine and wrote stories about this. And yeah, of course, in language class, I was great. But whenever I raised my hand, I was like, can I read mine? Some kids were like, boo. Or
no.
Teenager kids can be really cruel. I'm terrified of teenagers. Beings. I will say this straight away. But to be now an artist, it's something that I always knew I wanted to do. But, you don't know much of your options growing up, especially in a small village where art is non-existent. We didn't got much reference for art. And that becomes your microcosmos. And that's what you see. You see doctors, you see policemen, but you don't see artists around you.
So what was your first experience coming into contact with street art?
Well, my first contact, I have to say that it was street art. Well, I come from a city that it's like an oasis of street art. It's incredible. We're really lucky to have one of the best street artists of the world living in our hometown. And he was just painting the walls with incredible art and inviting people who did graffiti as well. And so that was my first direct contact, but still like street art, like you're not in a museum per se, you are in your street, in your high school, he paints a mural and you're found by art and then you are drawn to it like, oh my God, this exists. So I started also drawing and painting on my own and started imitating some of the paintings I saw around. So the most common ones was some Impressionists, some Monet, for example, or Joaquín Sorolla, who is Spanish and is also an Impressionist. And I started just painting scenes of the beach. And I would say that was my first contact, but was on a very lonely level then, going outside to being in Germany and going to a museum and seeing a gallery or, that was way later in my life. That was when I was 20. And I loved it. I haven't stopped going to galleries.
How did that feel for you, like the experience of being in a museum for the first time?
Incredible. Like it's just, of course, my first museum was kind of, for my taste, a bit boring because it was more of, like old objects. But once I stepped in a contemporary museum, I was like, hell yeah, this is my stuff. So I could just be lost for hours looking to one single photo. And then I took my notebook and started drawing myself too. And yeah, it was really eye-opening. And I thought I would love to or have a gigantic house full of art or do art myself.
What items would a museum of your belonging have in it?
Of my belonging, definitely sculpture. I love organic sculpture. I play a lot with clay. Definitely some paintings that are impressionist because I love the game of light and shadow there and love also the topics explored like the summertime and nature. Then, of course, I will add photography from people that I admire, that I've come in close contact with. Other motherhood photographers, I would love to get like gigantic prints of their work and some of my own work because I'm very proud of what I'm doing.
You mentioned about your uncle who had all these books that you would read when you were younger. What were some of the stories that were most impressionable for you?
I recall one called La Familia de Pascual Duarte, so the family of Pascual Duarte. I still remember it really clearly because it was a really tragic story by a man that keeps losing family members and himself in a part of rural Spain. And that was really... it was a harsh story. It's like to read as a kid. It's like you don't understand a lot of what is going on and a lot of the emotions that transpire from the words. And you feel things and you're not sure what you're feeling. You're really exposed to grief already. And one of the scenes, the woman falls from a horse and she's pregnant and she loses her baby and the man goes wild and kills the horse with a knife. I think that scene was like trapping me. I was painting that too for weeks. But I never spoke about it with anybody else. I thought it was a complete natural thing. Yeah, one of those. And I mean, of course, it was adult literature were topics that were not for children to explore. I can also recall one that was an American child that two kids that fall in love, and the kid kills himself because he discovers he's homosexual, things like that. And it came really openly to my understanding already what homosexuality can be, you know? And I kind of put the puzzles there in my own head when my family didn't really speak about that or about sexuality openly.
Well, that metaphor that you use of the puzzle, you contextualizing the wider world for yourself in your own mind, which is something that's so different from the atmosphere of a small village or a small town in the south of Spain. And wow, that first story is so impactful. And even symbolically, the horse is a symbol of freedom and autonomy. And you're killing autonomy for having killed this sense of motherhood and loss of innocent life.
It is incredibly powerful, yes.
So it sounds like from quite a young age you were drawn to these concepts of both family and motherhood.
Yes, unconsciously I was.
Talk to me about birthmark. Like, what does the word birthmark mean to you in light of your series?
So in Spanish, it's meaning antojo, which is kind of translated to be wish, a wish. And my father has a huge birthmark on his leg. And it looks like it's really, really big. It's like almost like a fist. And we as kids were like, whoa. Well, my father is like something that we as kids observed deeply because he's full of scars of an accident he survived. And he was always the object to be touching and looking at and asking questions about. But this birthmark was like really sticking to me. My mom told me that's because when you're pregnant and if you have a wish and if you don't make it become true, it will come to the baby in the shape of whatever. So I was like, so grandma really wanted an egg? Because it really looks like a gigantic egg. So this explanation sticks with me. But that's in the more literal meaning, you know, like a wish. And for me, I was searching for a word that in a way will also translate for me, like marca de nacimiento. What is your marca? What is your birthmark? Is it something that stays with you forever? Is it more than like a sign in your skin, or is it like something deeper and like more conceptual than that? And so for me, birthmark means literally the mark of your birth. So something that is your roots and it's your origins while also staying with you your whole life and becoming your home.
Wow. I love that. I absolutely love that so much. But even like that story that you were explaining about when you give birth, it's this wish that hasn't been realized. I mean, whoa, like, like what? Oh my God, that's amazing. Like that sense of allegory through something so physical is it's so powerful. Also, it kind of reminds me of like realismo mágico. It reminds me so much of that style of writing, of art. I guess this kind of touches on your previous photography series of like the magic in something so mundane and so everyday. In some Western cultures, like particularly if I think of the United Kingdom, like a birthmark is like, oh, it's just something that you're embarrassed by. You know, it's something that, oh, like this is an ugly birthmark, and if you have a nice looking birthmark, like you're lucky. But in that Andalusian culture, this is the wish that you never realized. Like, how powerful is that?
It is, and it's something to be celebrated. It's something that makes you unique. It's something that only you have. Nobody else has this.
Yeah, and where does it come from? Like, what's the origin of it? What's the significance?
Exactly. Scientifically, we could for sure explain it, but I like that my mom chose to give this explanation.
That's beautiful. I love that. And you've mentioned in previous interviews that you've described yourself as both a migrant and a mother. You've been living in Germany for a long time. You've raised your daughter here. How do those two corresponding ideas impact your sense of identity and belonging?
That's a tough one, because I think I'm still in the midst of answering that myself or finding that myself. So my daughter came to me on a moment that I was in profound change. Also was COVID. And I think everybody was in the midst of deep change or rediscovery. It's hard to explain because, for example, I feel now this is my home and this is where my daughter is born. She's German, right? Even though I'm teaching her Spanish and giving her the mother tongue Spanish, she still like expresses herself in German mostly. And it has become a moment to accept that I might live in Germany for, if not the rest of my life, for a very long time. And that I need to be a good presence and a stable presence for my daughter. But that has become really, really hard because I'm in the midst of like reinventing. I will not even say reinventing, like reconstructing my own identity. I feel when you're pregnant, your identity is crushed, it becomes deconstructed. And the peak of that comes on birth. When you're giving birth, you literally break in two. And you, from there, start little by little reconstructing yourself again, your identity as a mother. And it takes time. For some people, it might take a bit longer. And especially if you're alone in a country as a migrant, it might take a bit more because a lot of the routines that you had before are completely gone. My mother was visiting here a little while ago, and there I felt a bit again, oh, this could be this way. The presence of my own mother in the house already made it so much stable, everything. You know, I felt less alone somehow. She woke up, she cleaned here, or she helped me dressing the kid, or she helped me. This support, it's for me at least, is something that I deeply need. So thinking, okay, I have to do this on my own as a migrant, sometimes it's really scary and it becomes hard to answer, I guess.
You touch on so many powerful things there, is this breaking apart, but also the sense of creation that comes from that brokenness, you know, and that is a painful thing to completely have your identity as you knew it.
It is, yes. And not only that, I also started creating art at the same time. So when I was pregnant, it was the most creative I've felt in my whole life. You know, I was creating a life, which is already for me one of the, if not the highest act of creation. So art just found me again, and I had the time to do it because I had just lost my job. And I was just at home. It was COVID and I was pregnant. So I was just creating nonstop, taking photos of myself. I had this domesticity aesthetics, which is whatever you have at home, which is some fruits or it's yourself sometimes or some flowers. And I started finding, as you mentioned before, the magic and the beauty that is in the objects that we take for granted.
It's interesting because there have been quite a lot of stories of women who became extremely creative during pregnancy. And one person that comes to my mind is Leonora Carrington, who was a surrealist artist in Mexico. Relatively not well known, despite how amazing her work is, but she was in relationships with a lot of these very profoundly successful male surreal artists. And she would write about how when she was pregnant with her children, she was extremely creative. And I think as someone who doesn't have children, who is deeply grappling with the conflicts within me and thinking, do I want to have children? In light of everything that's happening in the world and everything that comes with that, one of the biggest questions I think people might hold is, can we be both creative and also a mother? And I think it's wonderful to hear you express that you found yourself really creative during that period and almost creating a world.
Yes, I became an artist the same time I became a mother. I always say that, and it could not have been any other way. My daughter is my highest source of inspiration. I was deeply intrigued by the transformation that is just pregnancy for other women, not only for myself, because I know how I lived it and how I experienced it. But I don't know how other women see it. Is it this so ordinary? Like you sometimes take it again for granted that a person is capable of creating a life. And I also didn't see it before. I had no big interest on motherhood, photography, for example, or arts before, like not especially like just any other. But it became way stronger once I lived this process myself. And I understood it also a bit deeper, and I thought I wanted to bring my perspective and my voice because I think still is, as you said, this woman expressed this, but still not very well known. I think still in art especially, highly unrepresented. And I'm not sure if it's because of the times also we live with social media being so overwhelming presence in our lives that we feel the need of wearing this mask or being this mother figure or like a specific thing that society expects from us. So finding this creative movement that I found of telling a more honest story while still bringing my own voice, which is this magic realism, it became really important to me to be able to express this side of motherhood that might not be the most idealistic one, but more of a natural and raw one.
Now, you've mentioned in a previous interview, you described the experience of pregnancy as a 9-month meditation, which I loved that description of it. And I guess you've touched on it there already. What was the like spiritual or maybe philosophical significance of that transformation for you?
It caught me by surprise, honestly, because I felt I was pregnant before I even had the test done. I was like, oh, I feel different. For me, it's really spiritual. Like I even dreamt of my daughter long before. And like, I don't know, I always saw myself with a girl. Like this 9-month meditation that you describe, it's literally how it felt. Maybe also because it was COVID and I just didn't have many other obligations than being with myself, which I think it's a right that every woman should have. I have some friends that are pregnant now that I photographed recently, and they were swamped with work. And already in the 3rd trimester, I'm being like, whoa, this passed so fast. For me, it was not the case. For me, it felt really, really long, as most time meditations do. Like you're there sitting still, like, whoa. But also like being in a closed room by yourself and just observing yourself, your body, there's nothing else to do, and photographing it and taking track. Yeah, I will say that the transformation that occurred inside myself was the deepest. Like when you notice your child moving in your stomach, or that is the craziest thing I've ever felt. Like, oh my God, There is like the realization that there's really a human in there. All these things that you don't know yet because you've never experienced it before. Everything is new. You have no idea. Everything plays in your head. And for me, it was just deeply spiritual to be home to another human. I think the fact of myself becoming a home was the highest of this experience.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. This idea of becoming a home for your daughter while also being a migrant is such an interesting question, isn't it? Holding this question of like, how can I bring a sense of home and belonging for my daughter when I'm also a migrant?
Where you don't find it yourself.
Exactly.
This is what I also found solace on thinking, is your home stops being a physical place and it becomes more of a spiritual one or a metaphoric one, and becomes the people you're with, and becomes also within yourself. Like I think it's really important to reflect on yourself in the place that you are, because your body is your primary home. Then your body becomes home for somebody else. And then yourself, your everything becomes this base, this foundation for this new home that you're building. And children need stability and a safe space. And you need to be ready to, beware that there are moments that it requires everything from you to give this. In a regular basis, like even normal for parents that are not migrant, it is really like the case. But even more when you're not feeling at home yourself, it's important to find a way to reconnect to this thought of you are my home now, and we're building this together.
So in a way, home is how you inhabit the world.
Yeah, I will say so.
Yeah, and also a sense of love and care that you give and receive.
Yes, exactly. And the little things around you. Like we have been recently traveling. We didn't feel very home in Berlin here for some reasons. And We decided to travel just to test how it will be to live somewhere else. If these things that you always imagine it's best somewhere else, it's real or it's not. And living in places that were not our house, renting apartments, hotels. Eventually we made it ours. We made it our home, and it became our small home for a period of time. And we felt we made our routines somehow. We found our favorite bakery or our favorite cafe. You always find a way to belong in the world and know people around you. I think you need that in a longer term, and probably a community of people who understand you and are going to be there for you, because at least for me, as I'm growing older, it's something that I really will also like to offer my child. I grew up surrounded by cousins, grandparents, going to eat on the weekends to my grandparents' place. I would like to offer something like this to my daughter as well, some sort of family. It's not only mom and dad, but it will also be neighbors and friends and people of the community that live around us.
Yeah, and then there's a sense of needing to be seen as well. It's like community offers that outside perspective about you.
Exactly, yes.
What would you say home tastes, sounds, smells, and feels like for you?
So home smells like jasmine in the hot air in summer, or like orange trees. It tastes definitely like alioli or paella. And it sounds like lively voices laughing or lively chat or some music playing.
And feel?
Yeah, definitely like grass on my toes or sand. I love to be barefoot. I'm home when I'm always barefoot.
Yeah, I love that. In light of your creative work, what questions are you currently holding or exploring around motherhood?
Right now, I'm very intrigued by the transformation of the body and the reconstruction of identity that takes place when you become a mother. I'm still exploring. I think I'm not really going to ever be done exploring this. Aesthetically, I'm also really interested on creating more images that are like painterly, inspired on Renaissance paintings, like, for example, using the chiaroscuro technique. And I'm also creating more images that are in open nature, exploring the idea of, so I'm photographing mothers of Berlin at the moment, and going to a park, for example, and ask them if they're comfortable with showing skin and doing breastfeeding. And this is also strongly for me linked to this sense of freedom within the city, a place that it can be really anonymous and it can be also very intimidating, especially for young mothers. It's a hard place to navigate, just to observe them be in nature, in the nature that we have available in the city. And I'm really intrigued by this connection, by observing the mother-child relationship. And I explored also painting with colors, like how will this photograph look like in colors that are just abstract, or in energies as well, the movement of an image. I'm trying to find different representations for something that is very ordinary seeing, to make it a little like in the extraordinary side of things, something that you look a bit deeper and you don't, again, take for granted.
That's beautiful. It's interesting that you are exploring that question like in nature as well. One thing that I've been exploring, the idea that we belong to nature, and if we can facilitate a deeper connection to the natural world, we will naturally feel that we belong more. And motherhood being the most universal of experience in terms of the human condition and that connection to nature and creating life. One of the things that I've really resonated with in your work is that sense of magic in the mundane, or in these everyday experiences. And you use a lot of the motif of the dragonfly, and the symbol of the dragonfly means transformation.
Yes, I know.
How do you know what to capture and when? Like, how do you feel that?
I go a lot by gut. With my eyes, something calls me. I mean, of course, I'm a photographer. I love to observe the light. So if the light is right, I will always be camera on hand. I find a lot of curiosity on observing nature. and observing flowers and observing insects, as you say, the dragonfly. I find animals fascinating because already being a mother, you're observing life unfold. You're never more aware of passing of time than when you see your belly grow and your child grow. It's insane. It speeds up and you're observing it and you become a spectator. So when you have a flower, like flowers have their own language as well. Each one is different. Each one has their own colors. Each one, they grow and you see them grow and then you see them decay and ultimately die in front of your eyes. So it's like observing life unfold in a kind of quicker span of time, a shorter span of time. And same with insects. They have also really short lifespans. And I don't know, like I found this beauty of observing life around me. And of course, what we have around to us and available to us is mostly this, right? Animals and nature and in the city. Of course, the symbology of insects also, like the butterfly, like the dragonfly or the butterfly as well.
Yes, metamorphosis.
Exactly, metamorphosis. And also in Mayan culture, the butterflies were the souls of ancient soldiers, you know.
Oh, wow.
That come visit. So it's a huge honor if one touches you. Same with the dragonfly. It's like a visit of a soul visiting you if they land on you. I have a dragonfly tattoo, of course.
Oh, I love it. I love that so much.
I love it too. And all this symbolism. And I find it very inspiring, the symbolism of butterflies in still lives through this history. It's also a way of observing life and of being beware of the beauty but impermanence of life. There's not a better symbol than a butterfly or an insect for this.
Mm. When you were going through your pregnancy during the pandemic, experiencing this 9-month meditation, there was this sense of time stopping for the rest of the world, but you were also experiencing the abundance and shortness of life. And that's something that's very interesting to me, just in terms of thinking about things like deep time and like how modern life and capitalism has hastened the pace of time to an extent that we all feel like we're all running out of time. Like we are always late, too busy, too frenetic and rushed. And it's wonderful that for you in that moment, you were able to be almost monk-like in a way, like separating from that sense of frenetic time and experiencing the abundance of those lifespans.
Yeah. So, and I consider myself really lucky that I had that opportunity. I am very, very thankful that my conditions and my husband was like there for me to say, don't worry, we'll see what we do next. And little by little, I just, found a new way of being and existing. And it led to a new path, this moment of being frozen gave me so many options. And I looked at all of them and art found me and I didn't resist. I mean, it kept trying to find me for so long. So.
And now becoming a home for your daughter and becoming an artist, what helps you to feel more rooted and more grounded as a migrant in Germany?
I'm not sure if I find very rooted. I think I find that I'm very fulfilled. I'm more fulfilled, definitely. But I'm not very rooted in that sense. I've discovered the art wall in the good and the bad sides, of the competition, the pointing fingers, or like the censorship. So I've become quite absorbed by the tasks you need to do as an artist that I found out is 5% creating art, really, and the rest is, if you really want to make a living out of your art, it's a lot of promotion, it's a lot of being on socials and dealing with people that are going to criticize you, or that makes me feel really unrooted, I will say, because especially of the nature of my work, is truly vulnerable and I'm putting everything of myself out there. But it had helped me to create a new identity, or at least to think of myself as an artist. That also requires a lot of time, And so since my girl was born, I was a mother, and then little after I was an artist. So I started adding these pieces, these little blocks on my own personal puzzle, and they start becoming me. And that, I guess, with time, it will help me be more rooted in here in Germany.
It's interesting for me to hear how the experience of becoming a mother was so transformative for you, and also so rich in the way that it almost kind of laid the foundation for you to become an artist, and you felt that overwhelming sense of creativity. I think for me, I'm feeling very psychically torn in the idea of like whether I want to be a mother. Like, these are questions that I think about a lot, and I don't know. I have no idea, absolutely no idea. And I've been reading Sheila Hetty's book Motherhood, which has been interesting because she's an author based in Toronto, and she writes about women that she knows and their experience of motherhood. She's almost kind of tracing that puzzle in a way, like bringing the puzzle pieces together. Like, should I be a mother? The structure of the book, she uses a coin. She does a coin flipping exercise.
It's a good way.
Yeah. But throughout the book, in terms of the structure, it's like asking these rhetorical questions and then flipping a coin, yes or no. And it leads you deeper and deeper into that exploration. And one of the images that she talks about, which I really resonated with, is the sense that the question around should I be a mother is, it's almost like someone's tapping their foot, like waiting for you to become a mother, or someone's knocking at the door, waiting for it to happen. There's this sense of anticipation of, and the dreams, you know, she also had the dream of like her child in the future being her son and what her son looked like. And it's just, to me, it's crazy because motherhood is so universal, but at the same time, it's this big secret. It's like this giant secret of like, should it happen? Like, should I do this? Like,
you describe it perfectly. Yes.
So how? Please tell me, like, how did it happen for you? And like, what was the unveiling of the secret for you?
I think I always wanted to be a mom. It was something very clear for me. And once I was long enough with my partner, I just saw he wanted the same, and we started questioning it and imagining it. And we started playing with the idea and see if it would make sense. And it did not make sense at all. But we still wanted it really much. And for me, was always like, it might sound a bit too romantic for many people, but I knew there was a person there that I was going to love and that I really could not wait to meet. And I just couldn't wait more to meet that person, because I really wanted that person to be there with me and be on my team and show her what to paint and to do. And there's a lot of romanticism around this, I have to also admit. The idea of being a mother is really romanticized, and it's not the case. The reality is much harder than we see. And I also got shockingly confronted with this, because before you're a mom, you look at a lot in social media, you know, like you read books, you hear experiences from other mothers. And it is not an easy decision. And it's something that once it enters your life, you're forever a mom. And the consequences of the state that you are when your child is born, it's huge for your child, you know, like mothers, you know, we raise children and then our children become part of society. And if they're damaged, they will spread this damage in society. And like that only for me was like, wow, I have to do a good job. And that's a huge pressure that we have as mothers sometimes, you know. And if you start thinking in that big picture, you're always going to be frozen. You just have to go back to the day by day, you know, to focus on one thing at a time and to do the best you can at a time, while trying to really see every side of it, every color. And the fact that I'm doing the work I do is because I also didn't see much of that. When I tried to inform myself about being a mom, the only reference I had was my own mother, how life was, and that was tough. But modern motherhood seemed fun, you know, seemed like Instagram made it look really cool, like, oh my God, you know. And you are confronted with this vision of modern motherhood, which involves a lot of perfection. And once I was, even in the pregnancy, I noticed this is not going to be like that. And I think it's a dangerous game that we are exposed to, because our identity is also formed by the media we consume on a regular basis, right? So the paintings we see, or the photos we see, or something you see and you're like, oh, I want that. It becomes us. It becomes part of our identity. And we are so exposed to everything. And the algorithm knows us better than ourselves. So it's hard to define what identity it really is here. So I'm thinking it's something so personal and at the same time it's still secret, because what you will see when you are going to enter the motherhood journey is something that people want you to see. I still don't see a lot of, the big accounts of mothers, these mama-fluencers having much content I can relate to. They try to sell me a lot of things that I don't need. Yes, but real talk, like real talk, not aesthetic images only. And it's a tricky thing. Like, I think it's a important thing that we treat motherhood, especially in modern times, as it is. It can be deeply isolating, especially if you live in a city. And if you're not near a community that is strong, it can be really draining. And it can be, like, hormonally, like, you can go, like, literally insane. Sometimes I just cried and I didn't know why. And I got confronted with emotions and feeling I was not really aware of. And it's important that you know everything that it will unfold, and how to seek help, everything, and how to express yourself. And art, for example, or photography. I think it's something that I encourage to every woman, even if you're not an artist, just to take photos of everything. It's a way of keeping track of yourself, because then you look back on these photos and you see things that you didn't see in that moment, or you can know best of your identity by looking at these images, like what did call me in this moment. And it helps to put the puzzle of identity together in these times.
That's beautiful. My last question for you is, what advice would you give to someone who finds themselves unsure of where they belong?
Honestly, I feel I'm still like on moving waters myself. But my advice, if anybody will want to take it, is to look at yourself from a perspective, like take a step back and create. For me, creating can be anything from drawing to taking photos. And taking photos has been the easiest for me in the midst of this all. And then looking back at them, like I did like a daily log and check the topics that repeated themselves was definitely what was drawing me the most. And it was a good way of knowing myself. What art you create, what are you drawn to? Like looking at art and noticing, oh, that calls me. Let's go that way. Explore a little bit different mediums and just play with it until you find a way of expressing yourself, because that will reveal things of yourself that you're not even aware of.
I think that's a perfect way to close our conversation. And if someone wants to follow you in your work, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram when my name is Isarrus, or in Twitter also, I'm HetiSurrealist.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Isa. Thank you.
Thank you to you, Isabella, for having me.
You've been listening to Zeno. To stay up to date with our monthly episodes, you can sign up to our newsletter at zenocast.org or follow us on Instagram at @Zeno_pod. Our theme music is composed by Alix Julian Edwards.